नमस्कार उपहार जी।
Namaskar, Rishik ji.
कैसे हैं आप?
All good. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about your background, who you are. I'm sure the whole 10 zones in KOA would like to learn about you a little more. गौर वंतो में चाय उसा मदरे वदरे ठीक
Absolutely perfect.
चलो ठीक है कैस के योतानी चाय ऐसे जान तो ताई चुन काथ करने से मजा अच्छा ऐसे में तो थोड़ा सा about your background कि तो एक कच्छ जामत तो कित पट बासे you need to kind of get involved with social causes and वजह क्या छे ये presidential nomination you start through and a lot of people are supporting you, but why do you want to be a president? So let's start with your background and then sort of
Sure.
walk towards like why do you want to be the president of KOA?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rishik ji. So let me give you a little bit background about myself. So I spent my early childhood in Srinagar. So I was 10 when militancy started, and then we had to move out of Kashmir. We moved to Jammu, where my grandparents used to live. I did my rest of schooling in Jammu, and then moved to Pune for engineering and started my career there. Got married and then moved to the United States in 2011. And honestly, my association with the community here and with KO in specific started, I would say, uh, almost 7 to 8 years back when I got engaged through my creative writing skills, and one of the pivotal moments I would say in that whole thing was when Article 370 was abrogated. And at that time there was a strong narrative around human rights violation and that internet should sort that so that time I really felt ki, what's this, what about our human rights, and nobody seems to be caring about or even talking for that matter. And so that's where I said, okay, it's upon us to care for our community, to care for the things that matter to our community, and be advocates for that. And soon after, I became sort of the zonal director, and this is my third term as a zonal director.
Yeah, we have actually seen you work very closely on several issues. So we are going to, in the course of this conversation, we are going to get into some of those. I
Absolutely, it's
Okay.
about we need to be talking about our stories. You know,
Do you consider that to be the primary motivation of why you're running for president, or is there more behind why you want to be a president?
No, I think, see, that I was giving you context how I got more passionate about our community causes. That was a trigger.
Okay.
Not necessarily that's it. It is one of the aspects about this role is about advocacy, and we should obviously by all means do that. But yeah, I wasn't saying necessarily in that context. I mean,
Okay.
if that makes it clear.
So I would love to know what is it that you seek out of this presidency, because we know it's a lot of work and it's volunteer work. You're not getting any money. You're not getting any consequential power over anything in the world, really, other than maybe a small group of Kashmiri Pandits who would probably be, I would say, just about socially impacted by your decisions, and that's about it. It's not like it doesn't have the kind of influence that some other powerful roles have. So, what really is in it that you want to pursue presidency of KOA?
No, absolutely. I think that's a very valid question, Rishik ji. I mean, what is the motivation, right? It's funny that you say there's no money. In fact, Lukanchu viral it basa hai. It much person melan. Even Kach president asan yuta. They're chasing behind this post, and it much person melan. So it's funny that you made that comment. But coming back to your question, I think that responsibility that, hey, I'm probably the last generation who has a living memory of our ancestral homeland, and that responsibility of becoming the bridge between our sort of 5,000 year old plus civilization, and how do we transmit and sort of continue that heritage, that culture, and retain and pass it along to the next generation. I personally feel that me as well as my fellow generation has an additional responsibility to do something about it. So I think, if you ask me, that is probably the biggest motivation, that hey, we can't wait. I mean, I can't wait for example, my kids to grow up, for me to be done with my job, for me to fulfill all my other obligations before coming forward. I mean, time is of essence, and we got to act now and inspire the next generation into sort of taking a more active role in preserving our culture.
Maybe this is being a little too nosy, but why you and why not somebody else? I
Sure.
mean,
I think, Rishikji, I think there are multiple aspects to why I feel I'm the right candidate. I think, uh, first of all, I feel I have the right pulse of our elders in the community. I understand where they are coming from, and what we need to do to take some proactive measures to retain the knowledge, the heritage that they are being bearers of that at this point in time.
okay,
And
actually, I want to interrupt you here. Okay, uh, I would believe you, but give me an example that sort of demonstrates that you actually do have the pulse of the elders, because it's easy to say I have the pulse, right? Can you, from your experience, share one example, or more if you want, but at least one example, which demonstrates to yourself and not to the world, but you need to be convinced that this is what you believe in is actually true. So, what convinces you that that you are actually thinking rightly about how the elders, think about you?
see, I think one thing that's very sort of that I can relate to is having those actual memories of our ancestral homeland. I feel connected in a way with our elder generation, that I, though as not as much as exposure, but those initial 10 years of my life, there's very strong memories of my ancestral homeland, and that's what I feel I share with my older generation, which probably is not as strong in the next generation, who have not actually experienced and lived in that ancestral homeland of ours that's back in the valley.
Right, but
So
your opponent might have the same connection with the homeland that you are talking about, maybe a little bit stronger, because I think the Jotamji probably was lived there longer than you did in your life, and probably has more, um, you know, I would say congruous experience. Chronologically, he probably can relate to. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily a competition between two individuals. I'm saying, why do you feel that you can actually connect really that well? And that doesn't mean that the other person cannot, but what convinces you that you can too?
yeah, yeah. No, I'm no doubt about, and I totally respect and appreciate what Dijotin ji can bring to the table from that perspective. But I feel, the advantage that I see is that, while I understand and have a pulse for our elders, in the sense that we have probably a shared experiences of our ancestral homeland, I also can bring the connect to our next generation. I can relate to where they're coming from, and hopefully inspire and energize our next generation. So I'm really viewing myself as that bridge between our older generation and our next generation, and basically activating and inspiring them to become an integral part of
But I would love to hear an example from your experience that confirms your belief that you are actually able to connect with the younger generations. Do you have an example of that you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the instances that I can tell you about, like for example, COVID. We had such a large disaster back in home, especially the wave 2. And while I had the pulse of what's going on the ground, like how do you translate that into actually activating the youth here? And that's where and I was amazed to see how our youth stepped up, and sort of I worked very closely with our young members in the community here, and we set up sort of an extensive call center operations where the youth who was born and brought up here, they were sort of actively and passionately working for supporting people back in the home, and I was playing the role of sort of activating and facilitating the youth, and that was a real example where I could translate the emotion and passion that I have for my sort of homeland, and activating the youth for the larger, greater good of our community. So
You're not taking the entire credit for mobilizing the youth, are you?
no, no, no,
Okay, tell us a
absolutely. But
little more
but
about
what
what
I'm saying
happened.
is,
Yeah.
as an enabler,
Hmm.
as an enabler, as a somebody who can be the conduit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's it about you that makes you so sure that you can continue to be that enabler? Because I believe the next role that you're going to play will put much greater pressure on you. And there are some follow-up questions from that line of questioning that I would like to ask you too. But let's start with the pressure that you're going to be under, because there is a lot of behind the scenes consensus building that happens. And when you are in a power position, you have to balance between being convincing or persuasive and putting your foot down, or vetoing something, right? So there will be pressures like those that you'll be dealing with. What tells you that during or through the process of dealing with those pressures, you can continue to be an enabler for the youth?
I think first and foremost, structurally,
Hmm.
if you see what what I feel, I think whatever KOA does, I think we need to make some structural changes where youth is embedded as part of those individual uh, programs, for that matter, or initiatives, and they are aligned with the overall structure and goals of the KOA. So I think first and foremost, structurally, for example, I'll just give an example.
Hmm.
Like we run a lot of these programs, whether it's EAP, SAC. Should we have a youth coordinator for each of these programs? Should we have youth coordinator at a zonal level, at a chapter level? So that's how you really scale and embed youth as part of your core mission.
Hmm.
So first and foremost, I would say structurally, we need to empower youth and make them integral part of these individual initiatives.
I see. And we were talking about like building consensus. We all know that when you have more than two individuals, even more than one person, lining up ideas, or excuse me, getting people to kind of agree to a common cause and align on a common cause, and the plan behind executing that, and then finally executing it, it's a very involved, and I would say it requires a lot of tactful engagement of your peers. So, can you share some examples of having been in situations like that in the nearly 3 terms that you have been zonal director? I'm sure there have been number of instances. I know you and I were talking off camera, and you mentioned a few things about time of COVID. There were like a lot of contentious ideas that you all had to work very very quickly on because time was of the essence. Or then after that, more recently, there has been sort of discussions about Janthri, or our Kashmiri calendar, and it may not be quite as life or death, but it is still a pretty contentious topic within the community. So can you maybe use a few examples and tell us, like, how does that really happen behind the scenes, and what has helped you be effective in sort of pursuing these ideas and building consensus?
Thanks, Rishik ji, for asking that question. And you're absolutely right. When there's a group of people aligning on a particular idea, is a process. I would say, I wouldn't call it challenging in the sense it's a process. Obviously, there will be some perspectives that you need to understand here, and we need to go through that. I think the bottom line, and that's how I've approached it. Keep it matter of fact. I mean, and what's your true north star? What are you trying to accomplish? For example, in COVID times, those were some. So we had to deal with some situations where none of us had dealt, and we had to take some decisions which were unconventional. And specifically, for example, I as a board member had to take a sort of a position, supporting or not supporting a particular motion, and things like that, which are utmost important at that point, was, hey, will this help save a life? And that's what mattered the most. So I think understanding what the ultimate goal is, and then navigating through the mechanics of it, and at the end, the board which makes the decisions, is is a bunch of is a group of people, right? So providing enough data points, giving them sort of perspective about, hey, what are the pros and cons, and basically reasoning it out to them. Everybody is a very reasonable, and they all want to do good for the community. So if you can be sort of unbiased, in the sense you're not sort of locked to a particular idea or locked to a particular group of people, and sort of in a very inclusive or non-partisan way you approach a particular issue, I have found success in that approach.
This is so insightful. Do you think this is what will come handy when you become the president? I'm hoping that you do. That's just my bias, but I feel that you have some experience of operating in this kind of an intense, sort of intense environment and being effective. How much do you think this experience is going to play a role in your success as a president?
I think it will be extremely crucial. See, at the end, we are a very volunteer-led organization. It's a community organization. So any material change that we want to do, I mean, it cannot be done unless there is a sort of a broader consensus about things we want to accomplish as a community. So absolutely, and I think some of the core tenets of that is, a lot of times people tend to, hey, emis kya shwatmans, what is the motivation behind it, right?
Right.
So trust factor, honestly, if you're to ask me one big thing, maybe building that trust among your board members, building that trust with the broader community, I think that's most paramount. Once you establish that trust, I think things become a lot easier, I would say.
Okay. I think yeah, I agree with you. I think earning trust is very difficult. I would say, especially when we are such a small community and we have seen so much, so much of hardship, and we have risen back from the ashes so many times over the last 700 years, as we all keep talking about. So, building trust, definitely, I agree. I think that's probably like the game changer, and like I said, I'm biased, so I feel that you earn trust really well. And I hope that becomes the reason why people choose you. Let's say you are the president today. Okay. What are some of the immediate things you want to change or improve or start or put into motion? Say in 3 months, 4 months, we will all start seeing the results of that, those projects or those ideas. Can you tell us a few things?
Sure. And before I get into the specifics, maybe, let me spend a few minutes to talk about what are the overarching themes that I'm passionate about,
Yeah, please.
really, which I feel that we as a community need to put our heads together and start working, because some of those things may not be a 2 year thing. Some of those things may be taking a decade for us to actually make some material impact, and I'll talk about some of the tactical immediate things which are actionable. So if
For
you
example, like Mata Khir Bhavani Temple.
oh yeah, I'm hopefully,
And I have been one of the loudest critics of the approach we are
yeah,
taking there,
yeah,
right? So I believe that there are certain things that we may not see fulfilled, and you have still kind of maintained a very nice sort of momentum on that. We don't need to delve into that right now, but
yeah,
please continue, your aspirational
yeah.
vision for what we should be doing.
No, absolutely. So uh, I think broadly, and you will see that common theme, in my manifesto, in my vision, is about. I think time has come where we need to balance on three key aspects. One is what we need to do here as a community to retain our culture here in US. I mean, if I sort of have a posture, hey, ashu wapas gatsun, and we are going to go back and settle. I think I'm not being honest to myself or to others. It's let's accept that most of us are going to stay here. Our next generations are going to stay here. So I think it's important and paramount in terms of what transformational steps we need to do collectively as a community
Hmm.
to preserve and retain our culture here in United States.
Right.
And that's where this I'm passionate about, having a temple project with a community center, and it can be expanded to a memorial and a museum, a library. It can become really sort of a piece of identity for us, in the United States.
Right.
And there are other things like how do we sort of through various programs focus on the community here in the US, which can be first of all engaged. I mean, if you see, I would say majority of the community members are not even engaged, right? So what can we do out of the box to first of all engage them, and let's meet them where their interests are, what
Hmm.
is relevant to them,
Right.
right? So through various programs which I proposed, my hope is we
When
can
you
have a
say,
broader
I'm sorry to interrupt you, when you say you proposed, you mean in the manifesto?
in the manifesto.
Right,
Yes,
which we are going to link in this
sure,
video,
sure,
and
absolutely.
we'll probably also show it on the screen right now. When we're talking about it. So you're saying that the ideas that you proposed in your manifesto, this is what you're explaining is how you want to see them in, getting into action. Is that the right
Yeah, I'm
understanding?
just saying, through various programs, the whole point is, how can we bring more engagement, so that we can take some ambitious projects, because some of those projects, unless there's a broader participation from the community, it won't happen.
Right.
But these need to be done if we got to preserve our rich culture, rich heritage here in the United States, and pass it on to the next generation. So that's the overarching theme number one. What do we do here in the United States?
Right. Okay, so what's the second pillar of your manifesto?
So the second theme that you'll see that is about how do we reconnect with our ancestral homeland, right?
Hmm.
And like the my point of view is, see, we have a deep connect with Kashmir because of our memories,
Hmm.
right? I mean, at the end, it's all about the fond memories that we had while growing up.
Right.
Now I think the time has come to make new memories with our next generation. So I'll give you an example. Like, I have a 6-year-old and 11-year-old, right? And they've seen me very passionately involved with the community, and they've just heard about Kashmir, right? So this time when we were in India, it says Gamit Mayas months. So I made it a point to make a trip to Kashmir, and obviously my family went. My mom was there, my uncle, aunt. So we made an extended family trip, and there were people from 3 generations, like my mom's generation, my generation, my cousins, and all joined. And
Wow, that must have been special.
yeah, absolutely. And each generation had a very unique experience. Like for older generation, it was like, hey, reliving those where they grew most of their
Yeah,
life, right?
yeah, yeah.
My mom would have been in 40s, right,
Right,
when they had to move.
right.
For me, obviously, it was going back to the childhood places, and sort of, it feels like a dream, but again, it was like reliving some of those childhood memories.
Interesting. Let me pause you there for a couple of plugs I want to make from our conversations off camera. Number one, you left Kashmir when you were the same age that your older daughter is,
Yes.
approximately. So going back and giving your daughter to continue that journey that was interrupted for you today, probably that's like coming full circle. Maybe that gives you some sort of a closure. Do you think it does?
It did actually, just taking them to
Uh-huh.
where I grew up, and the ancestral place where my generations,
Right.
and this is where they actually belong. That's their
Right.
identity. I mean,
Right.
it certainly was a closure in that sense.
Awesome. Let me ask you another question, which is I know the answer to it, but I want to hear it from you. You also explained to me that right along with this trip, you were traveling in Europe right before or after,
After
went to Kashmir. And you asked your younger one, who's how old is she again?
she is 6.
And you asked her what was her favorite memory of the trip. And what
Yeah.
did she say?
Yeah, I mean that's thanks for reminding that. So we were almost out for 5 weeks,
Uh huh.
right? We went to different parts of India,
Yeah.
went to Kashmir, and on our way back we went to UK.
Hmm.
Uh, and when we came back, I was just generally having conversation, and I said, okay, what was the best part of the trip? And Sashma Vanan leather. मैं तो उन्हें got fikri what she was saying. And then she said Kashmir leather. So she was talking about Pahalgam's leather
Uh-huh.
and Kashmir. So Kashmir was the best part of her trip, and so that's the power of that place. And
Yeah.
and I could see the sense of identity after that trip, and because you know th- when you experience and make those memories,
Uh-huh.
that's where the magic happens.
And
That's
you
where
and
you
you don't want that to be lost, right?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I know within our community there is a sentiment like, why should we go back, right? And I respect that,
Yeah.
and I know it's hard, but I think we have to find reasons to go, and maybe go as together as a group, because I know there is inertia, there are some challenges, there is closure has not happened for many of
There is
us,
insecurity,
there is insecurity,
right?
right? So I think creating those safe sort of
Experiences.
experiences,
Yeah.
so that we don't lose that, because again I keep going back to, we are the last generation who has that
Right.
connection and who can pass on to the next generation. So I think going back to our ancestral homeland, I think it has to be prioritized.
And you think that KOA can play a role in that?
Absolutely,
I see.
absolutely.
So what's the third theme of your manifesto? Talk about the
Third thing.
third theme in your manifesto, and I think from what I understand, maybe you can elaborate on that. You are very concerned about a part of our community that is still living in what we knew them to be as transit camps, right? I know that you feel strongly about that, and I think KOA as an entity has always maintained that to be an important focus of its functioning. So, what about it? Like, what is it that
Sure.
you think is relevant right now for you to do as a president for the part of our community that is still living in those camps?
Absolutely, Rishik ji. And I'll tell you, en route to Srinagar, I made it a point that we go via road,
Right.
because I wanted to experience, that aspect of it. And I stopped at the migrant camps, and it broke my heart to see that, the state of those migrant camps, and the fact that even after 34 years of our exodus, we have not found closure, in the sense that, those camps got converted from tents to, these concrete camps, but they're still camps,
Right.
they're still transit camps, so to say. And it's been 34 years, and I'm 44 now. I was 10 when that happened, and another 16 years I'll be 60, and it'll be like 50 years of our exodus. And just imagine the state that, even after 50 years of our exodus, our community, our youth, our kids are growing up in those camps. I mean, I really feel sad
Yeah,
to
but what do you
even
want to?
visualize that. So
What?
my
Yeah.
aspiration there,
Hmm.
as part of that third overarching theme
Right.
is, what can we do now, foundationally, transformationally, we as a community, to basically, have a future where, our community has moved out to a better life.
Yeah.
Our youth is not still struggling, uh, with limited means and opportunities, back in those migrant camps. So
Hmm.
so what can we do? And there could be variety of things that we can do there. One, obviously, we do things in our capacity through supporting the kids, through our programs, whether it's educational programs, or supporting for medical emergencies. But we can certainly do more, a lot
I
more,
see. Is
right?
this heading towards maybe? I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. Are you saying that an economic reform is what we need for pulling the part of our community that's living in these camps to pull them out and give them the upward mobility, socially speaking? Is that what you're hinting at right now?
Absolutely,
I see.
absolutely. And these could be things beyond just, supporting through what we do today.
Right.
Just supporting through, exposing them to what educational opportunities they have in India or abroad, or job opportunities, or sort of mentorship.
Right.
I mean, we have so many successful people, not just here,
Hmm.
but in India as well. I mean,
Right.
how can we activate the broader community to provide resources which are not available and accessible to them today,
Let me ask you
and
this. KOA has already several programs like Support a Child, Support a Family. There is also this Physicians Network, which have been like, all of these initiatives have been doing really well. What, apart from these, or are you just talking about reinforcing these programs with some new sort of capabilities? Or is it something completely different you're thinking that you want to bring in? And, how quickly do you think that can happen?
so where I am coming from is, make it an holistic approach,
Hmm.
not just have it a, like, a very sort of piecemeal approach. Like,
Hmm.
if we are supporting, let's support across the journey, like, from school, college, help them find jobs, and feedback some of the beneficiaries, how can they empower the program back, right? Why these programs need to be just restricted to our community? Anybody for that matter, who cares about what has happened to the community, they need not be just Kashmiri Pandits. I mean, these programs need to be sort of exposed to the broader Indian community for that matter, and they can be part of the program.
You
So
mean the beneficiaries of these
not
programs,
the
or
beneficiaries,
the
people who support, so
support
we
these
can do a
programs?
lot more,
Gotcha.
right? So I think we need to open it up and have a holistic approach in terms of
I
how we
see.
execute some of these programs.
So you are trying to increase the number of resources that are available through these programs. That's what you're
Absolutely,
saying? Okay.
absolutely, and go beyond just the monetary aspect. I
I
mean, there's a
see.
lot more that we can do to support our community through other
Hmm.
resources.
Some would argue that this creates like a lifetime dependency. Do you worry about that?
See, that is where I'm coming to. There has to be more than just monetary thing.
Uh-huh.
How do you create opportunities so that they get inspired
Right.
to take up those challenges, and basically, I mean, if you ask me, I mean, have a path where they move out of those camps.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very noble thought. So this is the aspirational part of your manifesto. Let's now step down into, like, you are the president, right?
Hmm.
You have the controls, or you have the means to drive the community or the programs in a certain direction. What are you seeing in 3 months from today, 4 months, 6 months from today? What are some of the results you are telling me I should expect to see?
Sure. I think you're right. These are some of the aspirational aspects, but what is tangible, what is immediately actionable,
Right.
and there is a lot of operational stuff. I think we need to start
Hmm.
addressing some of those.
For example.
And for example, as simple as membership data,
Hmm.
right? How can we streamline our membership data? How can we have mechanisms in place where people are reminded about renewing their membership?
Hmm.
As simple as that, right?
So you are
How,
saying those systems don't exist today?
so today, there is a missed opportunity there.
Oh,
Let's
really?
say, yeah.
Okay. And how much effort do you think it takes to fix this problem?
I think it's m- uh,
Is
more
it a
than the
matter of
effort.
effort or
It's
skill?
it's a matter of focus,
Oh,
right? It's a
okay.
matter of prioritization.
I
So I
see.
think, you know uh, sort of, I would say technology is an enabler, right?
Right.
And enables us to do a lot more than what we can accomplish. So I
Hmm.
think some of the foundational aspects about investing and sort of prioritizing
Hmm.
our technology assets,
Right.
I would say that's 101
Hmm.
in this day and age. And we have the talent. I mean, look around us here in the Bay Area. I mean, we have so many young, talented folks who are willing to contribute, and my hope is, through initiatives like that, which they relate to and they can contribute to it,
Right.
we can activate a bunch of volunteers to contribute to that.
Okay. So that's one example. Anything else that comes to your mind that you would like to fix right away, so that we can move beyond the operational into more strategic or aspirational work?
And the other thing that I would really love to prioritize is how can we sort of broad base our engagement. I think if you see, one of the most foundational things, there is only a subset of people who are really engaged with KOA,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's and unless we have a broader engagement within our community here, I think whatever we do, it will only have a limited impact.
Right.
So what can we do right away to sort of prioritize and focus on areas which are like blind spots at this point in
Right.
time,
Right.
people who are not even engaged within the system? So how can you put together a strategy where you engage them on things which matter to them,
Hmm.
right? We're not even thinking about some of those aspects. So I would say, in initial days, we need to put a blueprint. Hey, these are the areas where we are going to basically prioritize our efforts, and create sort of focused teams which are going to pick up those tangible goals, tangible initiatives with clear goals, and start with an overarching theme of how do we get a broader engagement within the community.
It
And we got to start this early, because
right.
it will take time.
It seems like you're going back to your previous sort of idea where you want to create more structure for youth. Is that something similar you're thinking in terms of driving more engagement?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think, for driving engagement, we need to have sort of a multi-pronged approach,
Hmm.
right? For example, I talk about, we have so many successful professionals, right?
Hmm.
And there is a way to meaningfully engage, our community members through professional events, right? And that gives an opportunity for so many young professionals to learn from, our mentors within our community.
Right.
As simple as creating forums like those to
Hmm.
to engage, people who are not even, connected with the community, or care for that
Gotcha,
matter.
gotcha. So what are um, what are some of the basic challenges in running these programs of increasing engagement that you foresee that you will have to tackle?
Okay. I think one fundamental change in how we operate, I feel, is how can we empower, the grassroots volunteerism. Because,
Hmm.
see, as a president, or a selected board, or a selected executive team, we are just a handful of people, right?
Right.
I mean, uh, so if we are expected to sort of drive and govern a community led organization in a top down fashion, I don't think we can scale beyond a
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
So how do we sort of invert the pyramid, in the sense that we have these overarching goals, but create sort of manageable, self-organizing teams who care passionately about those goals, and
Right.
and they and we have a structure where we empower them.
Right.
I,
Right.
I think that will be sort of the foundational uh, uh, priority for me in the initial phase. What can we do structurally different, so that, it's like these self-organizing teams in a self-sustaining manner
Hmm.
can pick up these multiple initiatives, and we sort of target this whole engagement, which is probably the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And sort of, aggressively address that.
This is very inspiring. I must say that, for the first time for myself, I'm beginning to hear some sort of an approach that kind of promises at least some improvement in the engagement of the community. This is great. I think you present a very uplifting vision over here. Let's go and sort of peel the onion a little more. I'm going to probably put you on the spot here a little bit. I hope you're okay with that. uh, you have an opponent who is senior to you, both in life and in professional capacity. And I shouldn't even say opponent, because you're all volunteers.
Right.
You're all heading, or you're all advocating for the same, more or less the same values or same sort of projects or outcomes, I must say. So it's not really an opponent, but you have a peer who is also standing, who has sort of thrown they threw their hat into the ring and said that I would like to be the president, right? Tell me a little bit about what do you think about their candidacy, and have you even talked to them yet? Like, do you have any first-hand experience of talking to the Jotamji?
Sure, Rishiji, I can certainly talk about it. And first of all, you're right. Dijotamji is not opponent in the sense, in the traditional sense. I mean, it's all volunteer work. It's
Right.
all community work. I
Right.
mean, we are part of the same team at the end of the day.
Right.
We
Right.
all have different ways to approach things, but I think the end goal is the same. How can we do more for our community, right?
Hmm.
And become a channel and an enabler for that. And to that, I mean, I welcome his candidacy. In fact, I reached out to the Jotamji and congratulated him and wished him best of luck for his candidacy. And I was very appreciative of him coming forward and serving the community. So I mean, and in the sense, I know a lot of people have this posture, hey, election splits the community, and ache, divisions ka san and all. But I think I have a slightly different take on that. I mean, elections, if done in a sort of a positive, healthy environment,
Right.
it brings community together in the when.
Truly democratic
Yeah,
process.
it's a democratic process.
Yeah.
And I do joke about I did a stand up, I think, last KOA camp,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
was one of the jokes that I said, Soinis voters shunu kunjai value, exi jaichu value, suchu KOA. So let's celebrate this democracy that we have in
Right.
KOA. And
Right.
it's been amazing to see how these campaign teams are formed, and they are so passionate. They
Right.
get so passionate about the shared vision that we put together. So it does bring the engagement. Back to your whole point of engagement, I
Right.
think it shows that we care. So I really welcome, in the sense that thanks to the Jotam ji, that engagement is here,
Yeah.
and we're all sort of connected, in the sense that, hey, we care about this vision, and we're
Right.
trying to accomplish this as a team. So to that point, yeah, I mean, I was welcoming to that thought that uh, democracy, yes, it has its own challenges, but it brings the best out of our community at the end of the
I
day.
agree. I agree. So, let's, since we got into a little bit of a humorous sort of conversation over here, I want to understand, what is Kotru all about? Like, what is this surname Kotru? And like, what does Upahar Kotru mean?
Kotru managa, kotru mara symbol of peace.
So, Upaji, your sense of humor is very well known, at least in Zone 9. How do you plan to maintain the sense of humor through your presidency?
I mean, I see. I think sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. I think, let's lighten it up.
Yeah.
At the end, we are all humans. We make mistakes, so
Mhm.
let's embrace it. And do our best, whatever we can. And at the end, I don't feel as a president, like, it's like, I think it's a shared responsibility. And I don't view myself as the leader of the community. As I see this role more of an enabler, right? I'm here to facilitate. I mean,
Right.
it's for the volunteers, it's for the community to pick up things that they care the most,
Right.
and bring it to the leadership, which is in the form of board, and will deliberate, and will hopefully support it. I mean, that's the whole point of this post, if you really ask me that.
Yeah, you earlier mentioned, actually, this is some of your ideas actually have a lot of backstories, and I'm struggling to keep all the threads together. Earlier, you were mentioning your wife Surbiji. She is one of the reasons why you even got involved with the community in the first place, right? uh, how does she feel about your running for president today, and what do you expect she's going to go through? Because believe it or not, everybody probably gets impacted in the family. I mean, I know you know this because you are a professional for and have been for over 2 decades, and you understand how your work impacts your family. So what tells you that this work is not going to impact your family? Because it's not like you're leaving your job and doing this, right? Or you're not retired yet, right? There is so much responsibility already, like you have two young kids, and that's going to eat up a significantly larger chunk of your time outside of your work. And in order to raise your family and to be a good partner to your wife, tell us from the perspective of Surbiji, what does she think? How well are you prepared for this? How well is she prepared for it? How well is the family prepared for this responsibility?
Sure, I think that's a very fair question. And let me tell you, I mean, Surabhi is, I would say, the pillar for whatever I do. And honestly, she is an equally passionate volunteer. I mean, she has been very actively engaged with KOA. She's on the board of Hemat again. Hemat works tirelessly for uplifting the women in our community back home. So she's an equally sort of passionate volunteer, so to say. And I know it is a commitment, but I think where there is a will, there is a way, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you prioritize things that matter, and you sort of let go of things that are not so important. So
Hmm.
in terms of the priority, I would say yes, job is equally important, because the financial security is important for us to do anything else. So you
Right.
got to balance between your work as well as this. But I'll tell you, see, our jobs are important, but this is something I would consider. See, let me put it this way.
Hmm.
If I'm not there, somebody else can do my job,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's enough talent here that can replace me in that capacity. but
Hmm.
but I think, the job that we got to do as volunteers for our community, it's pretty unique. And I think that's where I feel an added responsibility, that I can't outsource it to anybody else. I mean, at work, probably yes, I can find a replacement, we can have a succession plan. But for this work, I feel personally sort of obligated to come forward and not have a sort of an argument. Hey, maybe somebody else can do this for
Interesting
me.
that you say it this way. Okay, let me ask you this. What does a president really do? Like, what is it you're so hyped up about? What is the job of a president, and why do you think that you can do it, better than many others? And is it just you as an individual, or do you mean there is more to it than what we see right now?
Okay, so let's talk about the motivation, right?
Right.
Back to the motivation. I think it's tied to that. What's my motivation for coming forward
Yeah,
to
but
volunteer for
before
this?
motivation, what does a president even do? Like, I am a
Sure.
general member, yes, I am a lifetime member, but I don't even get to see what the president does, other than maybe send an occasional email, which informs me, or mostly inform me, and then also seek my input sometimes, and share some important, I would say, milestones for the community. What does the president even do?
Yeah.
You talked a ton about your motivation, but
Sure.
what is the president's job really, that you think you can be a good sort of a candidate to kind of fill in those shoes?
Sure. I think that's actually uh, a very candid feedback, that hey, what does the president do? I think we need to do a better job in sort of articulating that. And
Okay.
because I've seen at least two administrations. Like, I've worked with Archana ji, I worked with Shakunji, and a bunch of board members, and I can tell you there is a ton of work that gets done
Right.
in the board. And especially the presidents have to put in a lot of effort
Hmm.
to keep the crew together and sort of accomplish the goals that they have sort of charted out
Right.
for the organization. And I think we need certainly to do a, first of all, better job in creating more sort of
Visibility.
visibility
I
into
see.
that.
Hmm.
But back to your point, I think obviously, we have a bunch of programs and the oversight and the operations of that, the governing aspect of the board, the whole aspect about all of those things. But I think foundational to the role is, again, being an enabler for the community's aspirations.
Hmm.
And I think found one of the key aspects is, if you ask me, I think we have had situations where there could be situation where a part of the community gets disengaged or
Polarized.
polarized, so
Yeah.
to say. I think for reasons. But I think the most important aspect for president is to keep the community together,
Hmm.
and build that trust.
I see.
There is no hidden agenda here. There is no any other motive, but just to be an enabler for the aspirations that we have as community members. and
Hmm.
and we become a conduit, a channel to make that
You're
happen.
tempting me to ask you a few more controversial
Sure.
questions. Okay. You're a data guy, right? You rely on data heavily, from what I've seen personally, to kind of make your decisions, which I admire, because I personally believe that evidence based decision making is the right way to move forward. It cannot be just intuition. Intuition is important. It can start an idea, but then you have to fall back to some evidence based decision making, which either proves or disproves your intuition, which is what I believe in. But it's not I who's running for presidency. I know that even you, as a candidate, have demonstrated a lot of data reliance, or making data informed decision. So let me ask you a few questions, which probably you will have some data to share, or even if it is not something you remember top of your head, you can use some of the ideas based on the data. How many zones do we have?
We have 10 zones.
How many members do we have?
Like engaged members or the paid
No,
members?
just the registered members.
So if I just go through the sort of email directory,
Hmm.
it's maybe around 2,500.
And would you, top of your head, know what's the distribution of these people, geographically speaking, across all the zones?
I mean, there are some big zones, I would say, like California. Uh,
Zone 9, you mean?
Zone 9 is up till like Seattle area, up
I
to
see.
the Southern California is Zone 10.
Hmm.
But we definitely are a large zone. Then Texas area is a big pocket where our community is.
Hmm.
Then New Jersey, New York area is another big pocket.
Hmm.
Chicago is a big pocket. So these are sort of major sort of centers
Hmm.
where a significant.
Okay, so you were just explaining to me that there are 10 zones. There is larger pockets of population in few zones, like on the West Coast, we have California. In the South, we have Texas. On the East Coast, we have New York, New Jersey areas, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Maryland is another big
Maryland is another big constituency, for the lack of better term,
zone
right?
4. Yeah.
My question to you is, how many times have the presidents been elected from across these zones? Because I don't know. I haven't lived here long enough. So I would like to know what all different zones have provided presidents to KOA.
Okay, since I would say last 10 odd years where I've been actively engaged, I've seen, zone 4, zone 3, zone 5. We have had leadership from some of those
I
zones.
see. And when you talk to people on the ground across different zones, do you ever feel that there is a voice suggesting that there is lack of representation for certain zones when it comes to having the presidents sort of elected from that zone?
I mean, I'll be honest. I think there is one aspirational aspect about which I've felt in my community here in the zone, that hey, zone 9 is equally passionate, and we have not had a president in the past. So there is one element of it. Hey, you're going to break that thing, and hopefully you
Does it
can you
matter
can you
though?
can make. I mean, it doesn't matter in the sense, I think, not specifically zone 9. I think what matters is, I think in general it's healthy to have a rotational leadership.
Yeah.
What it does is not about the individual. What it does is it activates the local volunteers to
Hmm.
take more ownership and
Right.
bring new stuff to the table.
Right. Right.
I think that's the beauty of this model, that we can have leadership change every 2 years, every 4 years,
Hmm.
to different areas, which sort of activates a new set of people into the leadership. So
Gotcha. Is it possible that your zone could change tomorrow? Like, because your job moved to Texas, could you become like a zone 5 member in the foreseeable future?
I mean, that can happen, but I
Has
don't
it?
see that happening anytime soon.
Okay, but where I was going with that question was, have you seen people move around zones?
Yeah, for sure. All the time. I've seen,
Have you seen board directors move around zones?
n- at least in not in my immediate knowledge, I've not seen
Right.
ton of movement, at least in that
Uh-huh.
segment. But in general, yes, people do move,
In your
especially
experience,
in their younger days.
yeah,
There tends to be a lot more movement than
right,
when they've settled.
right.
So
So, in your experience, do you think the board members that you've worked with, if they had represented a different zone than they currently represent, that would have changed significantly their outlook?
not necessarily.
I
They
see.
I think every board member brings to the table their own unique experiences, and
Right.
their this thing. I mean, what it does in terms of again, sort of a rotational leadership, in the sense of how the KOA president is taken up by different zones, is just activating a broader set of volunteers who can
Gotcha.
be plugged into the programs. Yeah.
In your opinion, being from a certain zone does not in any way either advantage you or disadvantage you in your capacity as a president. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I mean, what I feel passionate about is change, right?
Hmm.
It's good to mix it up. It's good to have change. It's healthy for KO. It's healthy for the community.
Right. Right. I think personally, I agree that it doesn't matter which zone you are
Yeah.
from. If your ideas and ideals are aligned with that of the community, and you want to commit your time, it shouldn't matter what zone you are from. Of course, I have mentioned this before. I am biased, and I really hope that you win, and you win with like. A unanimous decision from the community. But even if you did not, it's not that I will suddenly stop believing in KOA or what it can do. Uh, but if you win, I will be very happy because of two reasons. One, I have personally seen you work closely and sort of, drive very, very difficult sort of projects, programs successfully. So I have a lot of confidence. I am not making a remark on your predecessors. I have seen them also do really good job and be effective. But it kind of brings it home, like, it kind of brings me closer to somebody who's in the spotlight, not just for the sake of being in the spotlight, but actually who may be able to represent my ideas, like not me as an individual, but the ideas of the community living on this coast and the challenges we face. It may seem like it's sunny California. What are your problems? You don't have any problems. That's not necessarily true. I think, like just like other community members, our kids probably need the same kind of exposure and direction as kids growing up in any other zone. So, it's identical, like, the challenges, the problems are identical. So for me it feels really good that there will be a president candidate, at least there is a president candidate that represents my zone and the challenges my zone faces. And that, I'm hoping if you win, some of that, those experiences will inform your policies and your what you're planning to do. Do you think I'm wise to expect this from you? Should I be worried about anything, Uparji? Like, are you hiding any secrets?
Well, you will get to know in either way, but I don't think you should be worried. I think what's out there is only an
Right.
opportunity to contribute in new and meaningful ways, and more people sort of becoming sort of activated to contribute, and that's really my hope. Like, uh, we all care about the community, whether it's east coast, west coast, this zone, that zone. It's all about, the opportunity to activate new folks into the main fold, uh, into sort of the KOA leadership.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your spending your time with me, and helping me understand and unpack what your candidacy means for the presidential position, the election. I wish you all the best, Upharji. I hope that you receive the kind of support you deserve. And I also wish good luck to the other candidate. And may the best candidate win. And it doesn't matter who wins. I hope that we can all work together. And I hope you can set an example for the entire community across the nation on how a president can bring people together rather than polarize them. And how we can sort of solve not only day to day operational challenges but aspirational challenges that you have shown demonstrated a lot of nerve for. So I wish you good luck and thank you for spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much, Rishik ji, for having me here. And just to close the point on the election outcome, I mean, just going back to my conversation with Dijotam ji, I mean, it was my commitment to him that if he wins, I will be happily supporting him in the board on his initiatives. And if I win, I would love for him to contribute in the form of advisory and take forward the initiatives that he cares about. So I would love to sort of follow through on those aspects, those commitments that I've made. And I wish him all the best and good luck as well. And thank you to the community who has really shown that how much they care. I think that itself is overwhelming. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Good luck. Namaskar.
Namaskar.